Hello there everybody, Adam Nicholas here for What Culture Wrestling. It's that time once again. We've had a pay-per-view and usually it means we get a new episode of Stone Cold Steve Austin's Broken Skull Sessions podcast that we break down for you just in case, you don't have time to watch it. Much like Stephen Fretwell, I'm sure you're probably a busy guy or gal. Indeed, it is 2021. Let's get with the schedule, shall we? Either way, this particular schedule featured Kevin Nash on Stone Cold Steve Austin's Broken Skull Sessions podcast. You knew it was going to be a good one. It's Kevin Nash. He's the best. Michael Hamflett wasn't here to give you the word on how good it was going to be. I really wanted to get him to feature, but he was up last night doing Money in the Bank stuff, so you just get me instead. So let's break down the latest episode of Stone Cold Steve Austin's Broken Skull Sessions podcast. Number 10, he marked out for Vince. So to start things off, Kevin Nash was in a confessing kind of mood and decided to tell Austin all about when he left WCW and first met Vince. Now he recalled telling former boss Ole Anderson that he wanted to leave WCW and he's going to go leave the business and go back to bouncing bars. So he was granted his release, which pretty much meant he was free to go and sign on as Shawn Michaels' bodyguard almost immediately. Nash recalled about how he visited Vince McMahon's house to go and seal the deal alongside the chairman of the board and said as soon as he got there, knocked on the door, Vince opened the door and he started marking out essentially for Vince, who was dressed in Zubaz and an Ico Pro vest because of course he was. It's Vince McMahon and it was the 90s and it just all sounds like the most amazing thing to see Nash, Mr. Serious Kevin Nash, all of a sudden marking out for someone like Vince McMahon at his doorstep. I mean, he literally giggled while he was telling Austin this and basically said just days earlier he was talking to Ole and Barry Windham about how he wanted to leave the business because if he didn't, his wife was going to leave him, and now he was standing in Vince McMahon's house about to go and sign a WWE contract. Life comes at you fast. Number 9, his first impression of Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels was the one who specifically spotted Nash, then Vinny Vegas, on WCW television and wanted to go and headhunt him to bring him to WWE to be his bodyguard. So it wasn't like they were pre-existing friends and he tried to bring Nash over to the company. Kevin said literally Shawn was the one who got him across there and he'd never met him until they started working together on WWE TV. And Nash said his first impression was Shawn was like a very self-loathing kind of guy. He said he knew deep down that Michaels was jealous of Nash's God-given height and muscle-bound physique, just through natural selection, I guess, and it kind of bothered him, and he said Shawn had real self-doubt issues, and many times Nash had to help him try and get over those. But helping HBK through his moments of self-doubt was a small price to pay for a brand new friendship that he would cherish for life, someone who would always have his back and whose back he would always have, and a lucrative position in both the WWE contract situation and on the WWE card. Number 8, The Undertaker's warning. Now, Kevin Nash himself would never claim to be the best worker out there. I mean, at the end of the day, even in his early days in the career, he would end up going along with things that he probably shouldn't have. Case in point, when Bob Backlund was trying to get him to do a sunset flip every night they wrestled each other on the house show circuit, and it just didn't quite sit right with a few people backstage, and he ended up getting some heat for it. One of those people in particular was The Undertaker. Nash said one night that The Undertaker cornered him and pinned him up against the wall and essentially said he never wanted to see him doing that sunset flip spot ever again, and said if he did, he'd be hitting the ring. Now, Nash obviously not being an idiot, because The Undertaker was well respected and an authority figure in the company back at that time behind the scenes, he knew to go along with The Undertaker's word, but more importantly, he knew that he was probably right too. Why on earth was he doing a sunset flip over the top of Bob Backlund? Number 7, when he thought Vince was firing him. Now, during a WWE European tour in late 1994, Kevin Nash, by his own admission, said he got absolutely blotto, essentially drank all the beers that were on the tour bus at that time because, quite conveniently, the fridge was on the blink. The next day, as you can imagine, he ended up having a stinker of a match and was pulled to one side by road agent Tony Garriott at the time, and was kind of shocked to hear that when they got back from the tour, Vince McMahon wanted him to go to his house for a meeting. Nash said this was a huge red flag and he was almost certain that McMahon was going to fire him. He was thinking, oh my god, I've messed up so bad, he actually wants to fire me in person. But as it turns out, he would tell Austin that wasn't the case at all. He went round to Vince's house and Vince instead told him he was going to be winning the belt. Nash pointed out he'd recently been Intercontinental Champion, the belt he assumed Vince meant, and Vince said, no, you're going to win the belt, as in the WWE Championship. I mean, imagine that after a night on the booze. You've gone out, you've got pissed, you come back and your reward is, you're gonna be the champion. And on top of that, he also fell asleep on Vince's couch while waiting for the meeting because it ran so late. This guy, man. I love Kevin Nash. Number 6, his WrestleMania 12 rib. Now before his match with The Undertaker at WrestleMania 12 in 1996, Kevin Nash had handed his notice into WWE, so he was already on his way out before he ever made it to the ring. Like the professional he is, he willingly did the job to the dead man who did the tombstone and finished off Nash, pinning him in the middle of the ring. What he did on top of that, though, was rather entertaining. Instead of just leaving the ring and walking out, having been beaten, he lay there on the mat for 10 agonising minutes. But this wasn't some mini protest designed to ruin the show. This was literally just Nash pulling a rape on the company because he could, and he realised that wasn't a damn thing that anyone could do. He was already on his way out, he was already leaving, so why not have a bit of fun while he's doing it? He said he could hear people on the outside shouting to tell him to get up and leave the ring, but he just ignored them and just kept lying there. Number 5, Austin thought Hogan showed disrespect. Now here's something a little bit different for these videos. Usually it's just all about the person who's on the actual episode, but in this one, you get a little tidbit from Stone Cold himself. The two of them went in depth on the rise of the NWO, and obviously it's a great topic, it was always going to come up, but then Austin kind of paused in the middle of it to admonish Hulk Hogan for the cover he did on Randy Savage in their match at Bash at the Beach 1996. Explaining that he was not a fan of the pinfall, he said that Hogan was too high on Savage's shoulders when Scott Hall made the mock count, and it did very little to protect Savage during this finish. Basically made him look super weak, and Nash suggested that maybe, just maybe, that might have been on purpose because of the poor relationship between the two. And also, just a little side note and a hat tip to the Rattlesnake himself for picking up on such a small detail and using it as a way to tell us all how he feels about Hulk Hogan's ego. Hard to imagine why those two didn't work together, isn't it? Number 4, what Nash really thought about DX. Now, Austin started to get down into some really good questions with Nash later on in the podcast, and one of them was he wanted to know what the NWO guys and everybody over in WCW thought about D-Generation X launching in late 1997. Now, no prizes for guessing that everybody over in the NWO and in WCW saw this as a blatant rip-off, but at the end of the day, there was no way, as Kevin Nash would tell Eric Bischoff, that they were going to top what DX was doing over on WWE television. At the end of the day, while they might have been juvenile, they weren't having to navigate the difficult terrain of Ted Turner and his corporate suits. And as much as no one probably wanted to admit it at the time, Nash sums it up perfectly by saying, anytime you go against WWE, you know they're going to outproduce you. Number 3, this will make the news. Now, the title of this entry is a direct quote from Kevin Nash to Eric Bischoff when DX invaded the Norfolk Scope on the 27th of April 1998. Both he and Hall thought it would be a good idea to go out there and confront Triple H. It would be huge because they would be turning up on Monday Night Raw, but apparently Eric Bischoff was having absolutely none of it. He gave the idea the big thumbs down, which obviously really upset both Nash and Hall, who just couldn't get their heads around it. Why would Eric Bischoff not want them to go onto Monday Night Raw television and essentially tell DX to hit the bricks on their own show? He said it would literally end up making news headlines, that's how big of a deal it would be, but still, Bischoff just wasn't interested. Number 2, WWE jumped the gun in 2002. Now, as we all know, WWE isn't exactly, well, how do we put this? They're not exactly famous for being meticulous when it comes to the details and planning everything out months and years in advance. I mean, just look at the product right now to see examples of that. In fact, while I'm sure there are many examples we could probably point to, imagine announcing that the NWO were going to be returning to WWE, but you hadn't actually nailed down the deals with everybody in the NWO. Yep, that's right, when Vince McMahon announced that the NWO would be coming back to the WWE on that promo in 2002 on SmackDown, Kevin Nash still hadn't actually agreed terms with the company. Not only that, but they hadn't actually had confirmation that he was even 100% going to be doing it. Nash said that he had, in fact, turned down Shane McMahon's advances on the telephone, essentially telling him that he wasn't interested. And yes, he might have been, but he was essentially playing hardball and was expecting them to come knocking on the door at any minute. But that wasn't the point. At this point, when Vince McMahon decided to air that promo, he didn't even know if that was going to be 100% locked in. And yes, while part of it was to try and negotiate a better deal for himself, Nash admits that he did actually have reservations about going to WWE and rehashing the NWO gimmick, because he said the company was doing pretty well at that time, and for them to come in, it might have been quite toxic for them in the locker room. It was a legitimate concern, and he wasn't quite sure. And yet still, they had that promo. WWE, yeah? And number 1, with a bullet, his hidden political statement. And we finished with a really interesting one, I thought, from this podcast. Now, I have to say, Austin was not convinced by this at all. He basically called bull on it, but Kevin Nash swears blind that it's true. Nash told Austin that his famous raised fist taunt was apparently a tribute to both Tommy Smith and John Carlos, who were famous for standing on the podium wearing black gloves and raising their own fists during the Olympics in Mexico City in 1968 in protest during a chorus of the Star Spangled Banner. Now, Nash admitted he wasn't the one who came up with the black gloves, glove idea. That was just something that WWE gave him to look cool and to look a bit badass, and I think we can all agree it totally worked. But as soon as he tried it on, he thought this was a great opportunity to do a hidden political message throughout his career by raising his fist while wearing the black glove. So there you have it then. Those are the 10 things we learned from Kevin Nash's appearance on Stone Cold Steve Austin's Broken Skull Sessions podcast. But those were only the 10 that we picked out. If there was any we missed or you thought were more notable, let us know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and share. Hit the old subscribe button if you haven't already. It's free. You can't lose anything. Why not just do it anyway? If you like this, you can maybe read the article as well over at whatculture.com/WWE. Or if you'd like to, you can follow What Culture on Twitter at WhatCulture. WWE. If you'd like to follow me, you can do just that at It's Adam Nicholas. Or if you just want some more videos and tell me to shut the hell up, that's also fine. There should be some just over here. I've been Adam Nicholas. This has been What Culture Wrestling, and undoubtedly we will see you the next time Austin brings out a Broken Skull Sessions podcast.